Hello, everyone out there. My name is Steve. You can call me DM Steve. Strike that, reverse it, not sure. Either way, I'm Steve. Uh, Welcome to my Dungeons and Dragons Beyond Avernus DM prep stream. So, I guess most of you probably have no idea who I am, or if you do, hello, welcome back. If you don't, then my name is Steve. Why am I streaming? Well, I don't know if I have a great answer for that, other than the fact when I was first getting into Dungeons and Dragons and wanting to run a game, I felt like it was daunting to take on the challenge of running a game, running a world, being responsible for everything. And I found myself in a position where really the only chance I was going to get to play Dungeons and Dragons is if I was going to run a game. So I latched on to as many resources as I could find online. And one of the most interesting ones to me personally was these sort of dungeon master prep screens that I have seen other DMs do. So I just got done running a campaign. We started it right when COVID hit. It was an online only. We called it a Descent into Avernus speed run, which was for me a big departure from the way I normally play, which is like long, slow, drawn out sort of games. And what I told the players is we are going to speed run it in that we're going to basically put the pedal to the metal and I'm going to pull you from scene to scene. When there's critical junctures, you guys can make a decision, sure, but really it's about me pulling you through the module as fast as we can. Not as fast as we can, but at a fast pace. So we started in April, I believe, and we ended last Sunday. So I've been kicking around this idea for a while of doing a prep stream for what we are calling Beyond Avernus. So what is Beyond Avernus, first of all? Well, for us, it's a continuation of our Descent into Avernus campaign. A lot of people will run the module from beginning to end. You spend a lot of time with these characters. You've done a lot of cool stuff, and the question becomes like, what next? In our case, I had the players come up with backstories as one does. I told them your backstories are not, super important. Your backstories are not what's going to drive the story, right? But it's important to have a backstory for your character to make him feel real in this world. So one of our characters created a backstory that he needed to get to the 8th level of hell in order to save his father. He sent me this whole backstory, this whole detailed sort of document, and I kind of filed it away as, okay, cool. While we were in Avernus, he kept, making references to it. We set up some NPCs along the way that would allow him to feel like he was on this quest. Especially in Mahadi's Wandering Emporium, he had an NPC that was his secret contact that gave him a packet of information with maps, a detailed plan, and basically his first step towards going down. And the contact said, take this packet, book passage on the River Styx down to Stygia, which is the 5th layer of hell. And we'll get to like layers of hell if you're not familiar with that. And it was just his backstory, the whole campaign, like kind of recruiting the other characters to go with him, doing little planning here and there, having flashbacks to this mysterious backstory about why he was here. And the players really seemed to like kind of latch onto it, and they were like, "Oh, this is cool. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if we actually did go further? What if we did go beyond Avernus? What if we went down and saw this quest all the way through?" And I was always kind of on the fence about it until the past few weeks it's kind of become more of a reality. Like, do we want to do this or not? And everyone was really gung ho, and I was pretty excited about it. So I decided that we will continue this quest line, which is for one of our characters, Hallandar, to rescue his father from Mephistopheles on the 8th layer of hell. So that is kind of the overview as to the what is Beyond Avernus. If you're not familiar with Avernus as the campaign as a whole, it's not super important that you know, but it would help. So in Descent to Avernus, I'll give you a cliff notes of what happened in our campaign. The character started in this really rough and tumble city called Baldur's Gate. They were arrested as one of the players was hired to murder an NPC, and everyone was kind of picked up in the process, even though they weren't exactly like a group yet. They were all thrown into jail by the Flaming Fist, which is the very hard-handed police force in the lower city. So they were then let out of jail under the quest and the trade-off that they had to go eliminate a cult known as the Cult of the Dead 3. So they accepted that. They went on to find the cult, follow the threads of the cult until they learned that it was backed by Duke the Lamb of Vanthamper, who's like the head of the city. And she recently dispatched the old head of the city to a city called El Terrell, which is their neighboring city, which they don't like. And while he was there, El Terrell disappeared off the face of the earth, leaving nothing but a crater behind. So the players learned that she was kind of tied and she was responsible. She sent him there so she could take over Baldur's Gate as leader. And she was currently in the process of working some sort of deal to try to do the same thing to Baldur's Gate. Well, they murdered her. They stopped the cult. They stopped a lot of that stuff. But then they were asked to basically go and take some of the evidence they found to Candlekeep, which is a really famous research library. They did that. They went to Candlekeep. And while at Candlekeep, they found out that the old leader of El Terrell sold his soul to a devil and damned the whole city to go to hell. Specifically, the first layer of hell, which is known as Avernus. So the players meet a wizard, plane shift to hell, get abandoned by that wizard, and then set off on finding a way to save the city, which involves first rescuing the old leader of Baldur's Gate, who is now in El Terrell in hell, and breaking his curse, and then literally descending from this floating platform, because the city's floating in the air with giant chains like latching it as it pulls it closer and closer to the river Styx. They have to descend into Avernus from the city, where they kind of open up into this whole wide world of like devil, demon, war, mischief. They were in search of an item called the Sword of Zariel with the little golden elephant named Lulu, who really wanted them to save her friend Zariel, who is now a fallen angel leader of Avernus. So we got all these pieces going. After a bunch of quests, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the middle. It's essentially nested fetch quests all the way down. The party finds the Sword of Zariel. One of our PCs, Marius, who's already an Asimir, attunes to the sword, bursts beautiful wings, becomes an angelic version of themselves, goes back to the city, breaks open the imprisoned angel. They make a deal with Tiamat, of all people, to breathe fire, break all the chains binding the city, and this giant angel lifts the city back to the material plane, saving it, while our characters stay behind because they want to confront Zariel. In the end, they were able to redeem her. They convinced her to turn away from her path of bad and come back to the good side, gave her her sword back, which has now left a power vacuum in hell because she was the leader. She was the thing keeping everything in order. And with her gone, all the other devils that kind of want leadership are now vying for a position. We have Tiamat and her general, which is like Arkan the Cruel and his whole army, versus Bel and his whole army and all the other devils, and it's this power vacuum while the demons are now running amok and just basically taking over Avernus. Okay, so that's basically where our characters left off. Now what they want to do is go further into hell. And I think that gives a good idea of, in the broadest strokes possible, what happened with our campaign. So let's talk about Beyond Avernus and what it means to me and what I want to accomplish it. So the number one thing that really interests me is I wanted to go to level 20. I haven't. I've played 5th edition for about pushing 3, maybe a little more than 3 years now, and never have I been in a campaign that went this high, let alone to 20. And so I kind of thought, because we did this fast forward, get to level 13 really quick adventure, let's just push it to 20. I want to see what it's like taking characters that are all the way up to level 20, what we can and can't challenge them with, and just at least once experience what high level 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is all about. So it's all new to me. I don't know what to expect. The real hard part, I think, is going to be finding a way to challenge the players. For some frame of reference, in one of the things they have to do when they were level 12 was to fight a demon lord, which is Yinogu. And it happens in like a flashback dream sort of situation where the characters are not, they're kind of at risk and they can die, but the idea is they're playing a flashback scene and they're supposed to fight this demon lord for a few rounds before Zariel, the big angel bad guy, before she was bad, shows up and saves the day. Okay, knowing that, Yinogu, I believe, is a CR 25 creature. Let me see if I can pull it up here on Roll20 real quick. Creatures. Sorry, I'm having a hard time typing. Okay, it's not here, so let's just scroll down to name creatures and monsters. Yinogu. Okay, Yinogu. As you can see here, he is actually a CR 24 creature, 333 hit points, 20 AC, legendary actions, all kinds of crazy stuff. I played him about as hard as I could. I realized in retrospect I made one small mistake, which is I didn't use Spiritual Weapon, which would give him one more bonus attack every turn. But my players actually beat him. They got down to, he had less than 10 hit points, and then Zariel came in what they call kill stole because she got the last hit and banished him, and they were kind of upset at that. But at level 12, and this isn't like I put them at full resources against the CR24 creature. They had went through this whole Eidolon battle where they fought like wave after wave after wave after wave. They had unleashed a dinosaur with a Conjure Fae. They lost control of it. It was crazy sort of rough and tumble thing. And I feel like they could have, if we played it to the death, I feel like they could have won. So challenging the players as they go higher is going to be more challenging. And that's a big thing we're going to have to solve, and I'm going to have to find a way to solve, which is how not to make every encounter seem trivial at this power level. And I don't have a good answer for that yet, but we'll figure it out along the way. One of the real challenges, which actually ties to my next point, is the other goal of this campaign is I really want to take them through different layers. They spent this whole campaign, most of this campaign, in one layer of hell, which is this war-torn wasteland, desert, hot, sticky, almost like what you might expect hell to be in like a Judeo-Christian sense of the word, like this fiery pit burning. But there are other layers of hell, and they are vastly different. And I'm excited to take them to all those layers of hell and to show them different environments. And part of that is how I'm going to ramp up the challenge. So when they're on Avernus, the heat is so hot that they can't walk around, because every time they try to walk anywhere, they have to make exhaustion checks so they don't exhaust themselves. The module gets around that by giving them an infernal war machine so they can literally drive everywhere, and this really interesting mechanic goes out the window pretty early. But I intend to magnify that each level of hell has different sort of effects on you. And I think that is going to play a big role about how everything works. Just so some examples. The 5th layer of hell, which is the first layer they're going to, is Stygia. It's frozen wasteland. The whole layer is just like an ocean with like floating ice that like moves around, and they're going to be like hopping from ice floe to make their way across, other than like the giant glaciers and stuff. So it's so cold that like even like cold weather clothes doesn't cut it there. And even being resistant to cold still hurts you. So unless you're immune to cold, you are like feeling the effects. And you don't get the effects of a long rest while you're in this sort of space. There's another layer, which is the next layer down, the sixth layer, which is Malbolge. 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 I gotta look up pronunciations. But in one of these layers, and I think it's that layer, the whole like layer puts so much pressure and willpower on you that in order to do anything more strenuous than talking, you have to make a wisdom save. So in those sort of combats, I'm going to be asking my players to make wisdom saves for like every attack action and stuff they try to do, which is going to change the game. So I think instead of just like throwing stronger and stronger and stronger monsters at them, I will make the layers of hell weigh down on them harder to affect the game. And that should make it fun and make each layer of hell interesting. So as they descend from layer to layer, it'll feel really different. And I think that's a really key goal I want. Is I want each layer to feel as different from the last and make it memorable for the players. So whether or not I can achieve that goal, I don't know. Hopefully you stick with me. Hopefully you stay along this journey with me as we figure it out together. We're not solving all the problems tonight. I'm planning to do like an hour every Wednesday to walk you through what I've been thinking, what I've been working on, and to brainstorm some stuff together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you this cool little map. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see it all at once. So in the Forgotten Realms, there is this concept of, maybe I can come back here and show you this handout I made for our game. So this is the planes of existence. These are the planes of existence, right? In the Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms, there exists parallel planes / dimensions that are completely separate from each other. Most of Dungeons and Dragons takes place here in this little tiny bubble in the middle called the material plane. That's where Faerun is. That's where the Sword Coast is. That's where like 95% of all adventures published exist, because that's where people live. Now, we can see Hell is actually this thing here called the Nine Hells, or Bator is another name for it. It's a whole plane, right? So the PCs to travel here have to be able to plane shift back and forth. Okay? But within this one plane in the Nine Hells, it is actually 9 separate subplanes. It's funny because like they describe it as being 9 infinite layers, but each layer less infinite than the one before it. So it's too complicated for our mere mortal minds to wrap our head around. So looking at this map, this is an old 3rd edition map. So in this 9 Hells, the first layer is Avernus. Like I said, we did descend to Avernus. The next layer down is Dis, then Mineros, then Flethagos, Phlegethos, interesting, Stygia, Malbolge, Maladomini, and Cania. And Cania is where we're going, because this is the 8th layer. This is where Mephistopheles lives. This is our ultimate goal in our campaign, is to get to this layer. So, going on some of the stuff I had read, and there's contradicting information from like edition to edition and one source to another, but this is my world and my game, so this is how I'm ruling it. The River Styx connects all first layers on all the lower planes. So if you go back here, the River Styx flows through all of these realms in the lower planes. Archeron, Nine Hells, Gehenna, Hades, Carcery, the Abyss, and Pandemonium. And it allows them to travel to the topmost layer of all these planes. Okay? And that's why the Blood War exists, because the demons can easily go from the Abyss to the Nine Hells, and it creates this sort of constant war. But once you get to the Nine Hells, you can't just travel the River Styx all the layers, right? In my world, the River Styx goes through Avernus, for sure. Then it goes down to Stygia. Because Stygia is kind of named after the river Styx, right? And it's rumored that the river Styx actually originates from there. So this was lore that I decided early on, before I even knew we were doing Beyond Avernus. And I told Hallandar that he could book passage on Avernus, cross the river Styx, and be guided for the cost of 1 soul coin per passenger down these layers and arrive here in Stygia. So essentially, we are skipping layers 2, 3, and 4, which all have cool stuff, no doubt about it. Mineros is cool because it's where all the soul coins are minted, and they could have had some cool chances to see that. But we have plenty of cool space to work with here. So Stygia, that's where we're going first. And then you can see it kind of funnels down into the lower layer, which is Asmodeus, which I don't anticipate they'll fight him at the end, but, you know, we never know. And then this is how the 9 hells is laid out. So the first thing my players are going to be doing when they kind of go here is taking a raft from Avernus to Stygia. So knowing that, the first thing I have to do as a DM and I have to figure out is, well, what the hell is in Stygia? Now, there's countless decades worth of lore on this, right? You could look till, you know, you could pull old edition stuff. There's contradictory things. So what I've done is I personally have taken a handful of sources that I've been looking at and using that as my reference. So the 3 main sources that I'm using for this, not for this one is not really stats so much, but more lore, which is the Fiendish Dungeons and Dragons Fiendish Codex 2, Tyrants of the 9 Hells. So what this does is it gives a little bit of each of the layers breakdown, some important locations that I can decide what to do, and it gives me a 3rd edition stat block of some of the abilities that we might expect these lores to have. So Mephistopheles has a stat block in here. I will use that as a base of reference as I try to create a challenge for my players. But mostly what I like about this is the ability to just read some information. So Layer 5, Stygia. Stygia consists of a dark and frozen sea covered with ice floes. Titanic icebergs jockey for position, casting long shadows across a frosty landscape of eternal twilight. That's cool. That sets the tone for me. Could I make all this up? Probably. Do I want to waste my time when there's all this cool lore there? No, I want to take 80% of what someone made and add my 20% spin on top of it. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. So the other one I'm using is this 5th edition product. It's completely fan-made. It's called Codex of the Infinite Planes, Volume 13 or 18, 9 Hells of Bator. So these people have gone out and they've made this sort of guide on the Dungeon Masters Guild. And if you've never heard of it, dmsguild.com, you can buy all kinds of awesome things. I got the 3.5 edition Codex there. I got this here, and my other resource too. So they've done a collection of every plane on that map. So if I go back to here, they've written a primer on every single plane and each of the sublayers. Now, a lot of what they've done is compile information from old existing things and put some of their own stuff in there. So if I look here about Stygia, the frozen layer of Stygia is a realm of enormous ice floes, titanic icebergs, and a howling wind that freezes blood. That's a cool thought. It's so cold, you can feel your blood freezing. The river Styx is said to originate here, though truthfully none know for sure its source. So we can take that sort of idea of the river Styx starting here. And then it talks about, some cities, who the ruler is, stuff like that. It talks about different powerful things. So one of the cool factions, I guess, in here is a let me see if I can find it. Helmbergers and diabolical character. Oh, cult. So this isn't just for one of those, this is all of theirs, but there's this thing called the Cult of the Midnight Desert. And so what it says is Stygia is a frigid lair, but it holds a surprising realm few associated, which is Ankugwagat. So it's like an Egyptian sort of lair. It's the home of Set. It's like a jackal god, but he's like a god of serpents. It's a blackened plateau filled with pyramids and obelisks, giving its region the nickname as the Midnight Desert. So within this infinite ice layer, there's just this desert where this god calls home. Like he's carved out his corner and he lives there now. I think that's really cool as a counterpoint to all the devils and fiends we've been seeing, to have that there. So this is, for instance, the kind of thing. I saw this, I loved it, I'm lifting it out of this, I'm dropping it into my Stygia. Okay, and then last but not least, this is Pip Yap's Guide to All of the Nine Hells, which was put out as a 5th edition product. It helps you how to write adventures in all the layers of the Nine Hells and publish them on DM's Guild for like Adventurers League. But it's cool because you can come here and it'll have another information on Stygia. You know, the landscape of Stygia is anything but land. Instead, it's a collection of jagged icebergs, massive in scale, floating in a sea of water so cold, it's said to freeze a mortal soul solid in an instant. That sounds really badass. And so it gives me a couple of cool NPCs, Code Enforcer Garioletta, a devil that just goes around and like literally writes tickets for flying too fast. Cathalak, which is this ice. It's basically underwater. It's where the Sahuagin have their realm under the water. So anyone that dares venture below the water is in their realm. Tantlin, which is this sort of the main city, and Tomb of Levistus. So it has all these cool locations, and I can take all 3 of these, pick and choose the ones I like, rewrite the ones I don't, and make my own world. And so a lot of what DMing is not reinventing the wheel. And so if people have done all this work, we'd be a fool not to take advantage of it. That's how I look at it. So ultimately, my players are trying to get from layer to layer. So the real question is, well, what does that mean? It's a good question. How do you get from layer to layer? In the first layer transition, we're taking the river Styx down. So that's easy. But other layers, they might not be so straightforward. So I did some research. I said, what actually is the method for going from layer to layer? And I found it's been well documented in old things, and this is a post I found and copy paste here. This thing gives known portals from layer to layer. So what happens is, from one layer to the next, there's a portal somewhere, and that portal is guarded. And people are not just allowed free passage, right? Going deeper and deeper down the layers of hell is a big ordeal, right? The people down below don't like exposing themselves. They don't like people coming in and messing with them. So the real question is, okay, well, how do you move between layers? So as an example, from the first layer to the second, the portal that is most commonly known is in Tiamat's lair. So Tiamat is said to be the guardian of this portal. She guards this portal. You have to go into her lair, through it, down to get to the second layer. Whether that means fighting dragons, whether it means doing something for her, somehow you have to have her blessing to transfer between layers. Okay, but what is the portal that we're most interested in? So, from Stygia to Malboj, it's said there are portals from Tantalin, which is the big ice city. It's like the main devil city. So in the main city, there's a portal there that can go down to the next layer. Okay, that's cool. It says there's also the divine realm of Ankh-Ugat, which is this Egyptian desert. Deep below the desert, in these like labyrinth sort of paths, there's another portal that can go down. And there's also, it's not on here, but another portal I found mentioned is in the Sahuagin layer, deep beneath the ocean where they patrol, because they're down at the farthest bottom. That's another place where you can transfer. So traditionally, what you want to do is find the lowest point of the plane, and that's how you arrive at the highest point of the next plane. So in our case, what are our players doing in Stygia? Their number one goal, because they don't have anything here, there's nothing driving them, there's no quests, other than get to the next layer. So that is essentially the challenge we are facing our players. Find your way to the next layer. So how do we do that? Well, based on all this information I've compiled together, here's some facts about Stygia. The current Archduke of Stygia is named Levistus. he has an interesting past where he basically took over the lair from the previous Devil Lord, and they were like fighting over it. And then Levisus actually killed Asmodeus' consort. And Asmodeus is like, when you think of the devil, he is like the devil. He is the highest tier. Everyone works under him. So he's the pinnacle of the hierarchy, because the infernal hierarchy, devils are all about having this hierarchy of who's reporting to who. He's at the top of that hierarchy. His consort, I wouldn't say girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, his consort was killed by Levisus. And Asmodeus was rightfully angry for this, so he stripped him of all his power. But then, for reasons unknown, he gave Levisus domain over Stygia, but as punishment, he is trapped within a glacier. So right now, he's not able to walk around, he's not able to have conversations, he can't do day-to-day activities. He can only flow wherever the current takes him. So he's here, he's the leader, but he's in this glacier just floating around wherever chance can take him. And it's kind of this really weird but cool moment where the players may stumble across him and have a chance to converse with him. He's kind of known as the person that gives people a chance. So if people are like stuck, if they're dying in the cold, if they have no way out and they're imprisoned, much like he is kind of the one that can offer them a way out. He can offer them a deal to get out of whatever bonds they're in, whatever issues they have. And that's kind of become his specialty. And so he's this really interesting lord, which is very different from the current one that they saw, which is Zariel, who is very hands-on. I'm in the middle of the war. I'm fighting. I'm doing everything I can to win this war. And Levisus is more like, yeah, I'm just floating around and trying to bide my time until I can find a way out of this and get revenge on Asmodeus for doing this to me. Because his ultimate goal is to ascend the hierarchy, which is ultimately every devil's goal. Okay, so the entire, as we said, the whole realm is covered in ice and water and glaciers, and the players really shouldn't feel like they can just, oh, I'm just going to put up a tent and be fine. Like, no, this cuts you to your core. It freezes your soul. So one of the things I'm really doing is this idea that unless you can find a safe, warm place, or you have the blessing of Levisus, or maybe one of these other faction leaders can provide you with a way, you don't actually get a long rest. And so one of the things that I'm going to do for a challenge on this layer is, instead of throwing super hard monsters at them, I can throw like medium to easy encounters at them, but every encounter I throw at them chips away at their resources. And when they take a long rest, they're not getting their spell slots back. They're not getting all that stuff back, you know? It's like, yeah, they can walk in, they're going to feel badass. They're going to do some fights, and then they're going to realize, oh god, it's a battle of attrition. I can't get my spell slots back and cast Goodberry every day. Oh god, I can't do this, I can't do that. And so I think that is one of the primary challenges I'm going to give them on this layer. Now, there's different ways I could do this. Like I said, we come out of a speedrun sort of world where I pulled them from one encounter to the next, to the next, to the next, give them choices when it's appropriate, but I didn't really say, here's an open world, go have fun. So as a contrast to that, one of the things I really want to do with Stygia is open it up into a sandbox. So when I say sandbox, there are like lots of different takes on what a sandbox is. Some sandboxes are drop them in a map, use all random encounters, don't have any sort of like plot, just whatever the players see, they come across, they find something interesting, we do it. That's not the kind of sandbox I'm specifically thinking of when I say sandbox. So what I envision is a sort of flow map where there is a start point and an end point. So our start point is arriving in Stygia, and our end point is leaving Stygia. So the question is, how do they get to the middle? And I don't want there to just be one path. Like, I could design 5 encounters in a row and throw them on my players, and we could do this kind of cool roller coaster through Stygia. And, as a matter of fact, that is my plan with some of the other layers. But in this layer specifically, to counterbalance that take on Avernus, I really want it to be a sandbox. So, what I've done is two things. First of all, within Roll20, I can show you. I've made, well, right now it's not finished, but I've made a map of Stygia. Oh, I need to rename it. I just noticed it's still called Avernus. All right. So here is this map. And so what is this map? This is a map I made in Incarnate, which is a resource you can use. I highly recommend it. It allows you to make really cool maps just with like very little artistic ability. So this is my take on a sandbox / style map of Stygia. So this black oily water here, this is the river Styx. So as the players arrive, they're going to be dropped off, at the shores up here by the ferryman, and kind of dropped off on an islo and said, "Good luck. This is as far as your money takes you, and go back." So, what are the major landmarks I've added in this sandbox? So, I've broken it up into a hex grid because I want my players to be able to travel hex by hex with time, right? I want them to spend the time moving from hex to hex. If I show you the lighting I have, when they drop in, they can see slightly into each next hex, right? So as they come here, it's like, oh god, okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, now I'm coming here. Now where? Oh, now I'm going there. And they're gonna travel across the world looking for landmarks and things that they could find, right? I have a little bit of tweaking to do, but that's the idea, anyways. And a lot of those landmarks I mentioned in our earlier documents that I looked up, I've put them here. So this right here is something I made up. This little city, this is basically a military encampment, and I wanted this to show that there are military divisions on every level. Even though there's no open war here, there's a military branch because each layer is responsible for fielding an army that can join the Blood War when necessary. And given the way that they left things by destabilizing Avernus, the demons are going to start winning that war. The devils are infighting, which allows the demons to take hold. So I'm going to have demons basically winning the war in Avernus. If they go back there, they're going to see demons taking over everything. The demons are going to start falling out of the portals in Avernus back to the material plane and kind of wreaking havoc there. So that's the one thing I want to keep magnifying as we go ahead with our campaign is, the choices you made have lasting effects. There's even talk, they want to go back and kill the next person that's supposed to be in charge, Bell, because he read them the wrong way and he has a contract over one of our players. So they want to kill him to end the contract. That will definitely destabilize things even more. That's a thought for another stream, I think. So anyways, this is my map. This is a military encampment. This is something called the Duelist Chasm, which is Stygia has this interesting law where within this plane, no devil is allowed to directly fight another devil. That is one of the laws of this plane. So it doesn't matter if somebody wronged you, you cannot take arms, you cannot fight against another devil. The only exception is if both devils agree, you can go to this battle arena called the Duelist Chasm and fight. And it becomes a primary source of entertainment with all these devils that have a devil fight club in the middle of this island in the river Styx. So that sounds really cool to me, to have this sort of fight club set up. The players may go there, they may not, I don't know. But maybe they're going to be some kind of devil battle royale. My players can take devils on one and prove themselves. That could be cool. This is Tantalin. This is the big city, the major city. So this is kind of one of their main goals to get to because they can take a portal down from here. I also have way down here. This is that desert we were talked about. Set's desert, the Ankerwurst, or I gotta look how to pronounce it, but it's full of like obsidian towers and pyramids and temples. And if the players come here, there's lots of hidden treasure and lots of cool stuff, and the ability to descend deep below the pyramid and find a portal down to the next layer. And then I got some other things, like this is the Hall of the Forgotten, I believe it's called, which is where Occulto Levistus kind of sets up shop, and they work out of these glaciers up here, kind of away from the devils. And there's this, since this Levistus is called, he doesn't want his devils messing with them, but that doesn't mean the devils like them, right? So there's this fun chance for the devils to use the heroes, because they can't act against the cult, but the heroes can. So the devils can prod the heroes to like mess with them, which make the devils happy, and maybe they can use that to gain favor with the devils and to descend to the next layer. I still need to flesh this out a little bit. Essentially, what I want to do is have like random encounters for every like hex they roll on. I'm gonna roll like for a day, like how many random encounters we can get for the day, and what those encounters could be. Some of the encounters that I've thought of, not all of them are combat, but like some of the combat ones are just going to be like polar bears, remorazes, mammoths, all these creatures that like live in ice and stuff, right? Especially like aquatic creatures, Sahuagin. They can totally get ambushed by Sahuagin because they're on these like floating ice floes. The Sahuagin can pop up out of the water and like ambush them and try to drag them down into the cold, because they know if they can just drag mortals into the cold, then their body's gonna shut down and they're gonna like have an easy way. So that's kind of like a way to make the environment the main focus for the danger. So Sahuagin aren't that dangerous. Paired with frosty, frigid waters, they definitely can become. Frost giants, like maybe not in the ice flows, right? Because the ice flows can't support them, but up here in the glaciers, frost giants could roam, and they could be there to sort of challenge the people. Maybe not like directly challenge them, but you know, the frost giants are a proud race. There's a chance that one of my players is going to have a hammer that is kind of belongs to one of the frost giants' gods. And so if he's walking around with this frost giant god's hammer, that they're not going to be too happy about that, or they're going to bow down to him and worship him like he's God. I don't know. But the idea is there will be random encounters. One of the random encounters that was in one of these documents, and I really like the idea, is they find in Amnesu, which is pretty high up in the hierarchy, trying his hardest to pull a sled full of like a giant locked safe across the land, and he's having a really hard time because he's not cut out for this work, but he won't give up. And he kind of prods the heroes like, hey, can you help me? If you can help me get this to like where I'm going, there's a reward in it for you. I can get you travel papers, I can get you safe passage papers, like, you know, whatever you need. And that'll be a way to kind of quest hook them in to visiting the city and allowing them to pick up that sort of quest line. So some of the other cool encounters I plan, obviously a random encounter, Levistus floating around. They just happen to come across Levistus's ice flow, and a chance to meet him and see what he's all about. There's an artist that's like has a floating ice flow with all his statues that he really loves, and he definitely prods the people to like tell him, give him critique, and if they're too mean to him, then he, you know, animates the statues to fight him. That sounds pretty cool. I haven't fully fleshed out all the encounters, but you can kind of see where my idea is going, right? Cool one-off encounters that aren't like campaign building round worthy, but interesting enough to stand on their own. So the way I'm approaching this is by building a flowchart. So I've got this tool, which is like this free tool I used in Google Docs, which is, let's build a flowchart together and kind of show you how my sandbox flowchart works. So far I've come with 3 quest hooks, and I think 3 quest hooks is enough, although I'm kind of shaky on this third one, and I might need to change it. So if anyone out there has any ideas, post, comment, message me, give me some cool ideas for this. But basically, the first one is Levistus Devil quest hook. This is, like I said, with the Amnesu, carrying the cart across the plains, or if they go to any of the encampments or the cities, they can kind of get this quest hook, which is the Levistus Devils need something done. Whether that's fighting another faction for them, retrieving an item. They're going to need some quest done in order to earn their favor. And if you earn their favor, they'll grant you access to their portal, and then you can go to the next layer. The next option is the Desert Cult quest. So this desert exists with a cult that lives within it. If you don't feel like dealing with devils, and they might not because they've had some bad experiences with devils, they can wander into the desert or meet somebody wandering the ice, and they can go here and kind of ally with this faction. And this faction will maybe put them through like a temple trial, or have them go retrieve an item that was stolen by the frost giants. Or maybe they really are upset at the devils, and they want the PCs to like go to some military encampment and just wipe them all out. Like, we can do all kinds of cool stuff here, but the idea is the Desert Cult itself would be this quest hook that the players could latch onto. And the third one I have here is Sahuagin. The Sahuagin have their own sort of, I guess, ambitions, and it's just this presence which is here. We also have, earlier in our campaign, they had a run-in with some Sahuagin, so it's kind of fun to do that callback to these Sahuagin, or as Adam and Rick always says, the Sahuagin. I'm not sure entirely why. But ultimately, this would be another quest hook. Same thing. They want something. They need the PCs to go do something, and the PCs can. Or they can choose to just back off and go one of the other quest hooks. I'm kind of toying with the idea of, instead of making this Sahuagin, maybe Frost Giants. But the reason I've kind of picked these three is because these are the three factions that really control the portals, right? The Devils control one portal. The Cult controls another portal, and the Sahuagin control the portal. So next, that becomes, okay, well, now I need to come up with some locations in the world that these cool things can happen. So one of them I've created down here is this box called the Frost Giants Lair. It's got to be some other cool sort of locations, right? So like, let's say like, let's call it like Set's Pyramid, right? So maybe one of the factions sends someone to Set's Pyramid, and we have this cool sort of pyramid in the desert they got to find their way to. They got to go inside, and they got to retrieve some ancient relic artifact, right? You have traps, you have mummy lords, you have all kinds of cool stuff. That seems like a cool set piece and a cool sort of location I wouldn't mind exploring. We can just say another one of these could be the Duelist Chasm we talked about, right? There's this Duelist Chasm that's out there. It's a set piece. Maybe somebody hasn't gone on a quest there. Oh, another one I need to put down here, right? So, Hall of the Forgotten, which is the base of operations where the Levisis cult operates. So that would be a really cool set piece and a really cool location to go. And another one that I've kind of been toying with the idea here, I'm going to put it in the middle, which is, I'm just going to call it Dragon's Lair. So, let's say there is this ancient white dragon that's out there. I think I put some of these quest ideas down here. I have to flesh them out, but, you know, quest ideas. An ancient white dragon has set up shop and seems to be infected by some disease, causing it to become overly aggressive, leading to it stealing up all the treasures it sees uncontrollably. So this dragon's existed here for like a long time. Only something's recently caused it to become more aggressive, like some sort of like cold-based disease, or maybe one of these factions has done something to it. I don't know. But the players could then seek out this dragon's lair and defeat the ancient dragon, and get access to its entire hoard, which gives them lots of treasure, lots of gold, lots of stuff. And generally, I can dangle this in for my players, and my players are like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome, let's do it. And that's what we do. If they're like, I don't really want to do that, they can pick one of the other quests, and it's not a big deal. So, how do we... Oh, one of these I was reading some stuff, and I came up with this idea, and I really like it. It says, quest idea, find a flower growing in the desert that can cure the river Styx memory wipe. It's guarded closely by the followers of Set. So it's said, the river Styx washed away your memory and it's gone. But it's said that there's a single flower that's guarded here that the cult very closely guards, right? And you can use that to brew like an antitoxin to counteract the effects of the river Styx. I just like the imagery of that and the idea that there is this sort of this mythological flower that can actually counter that. And so I like dangling that sort of quest idea into this world. I just like I like the symbolic nature of it, and it sounds cool and epic and a cool memory. So I put that down. The other ones I had like retrieve an artifact stolen by the cult of Levistus and return it to the followers of Set. And then, a sect of devils loyal to Geryon needs to be purged, but the laws of the lair do not let devils act against each other. Find a way to eliminate their leader. So let's go back to my flowchart, right? So I've got this Dragon Slayer, but I also have, I'm going to say Geryon, and I'm probably not spelling it right, faction. So remember earlier I was talking about Levistus took over from Geryon, and now Levistus is the ruler, even though he's stuck in ice. There are people loyal to the old leaders still around. Now, the laws of the lair do not allow either faction to directly attack each other. But if the PCs were to ally with the one faction against another, that provides some interesting politics. So I'm going to add that as an option for like a set piece. And then this is kind of one I have a way to kind of like loop it into further in the campaign, which says Levistus needs help making contact off the books with Glacia. And I think I spelled that wrong. He needs the party to deliver a small chest to her and is willing to give them a reprieve from the cold. So if they happen to come across him, he finds out they're going further down. And he's trying to make allies against Asmodeus. Glacia happens to be Asmodeus' daughter. She also happens to be so rebellious that she has no qualms with like kind of going against her own father, because every devil has ambition. So he's trying to make an ally with her, but he can't leave and go talk to her, and she's not coming to him. So he needs to do it through these intermediaries. So the idea here is they have to deliver a chest to her, and then he's already delivered her like a key or some mechanism to open it. And all it is like a top secret sort of treaty between the two to ally and combine their forces against Asmodeus. Completely separate. It's just like kind of backstory stuff that's going on that makes the world feel deeper, that isn't really meant to directly involve my players, other than them just having this excuse and a reason for Levistus to kind of let them go through his lair down to the next level, right? This could be like the end piece to get them out of the lair, go deliver this to the next lair, right? That's a good transition to the next level. So I kind of feel like this is maybe like an end piece. So here's what I would do, right? We have this chart, but we need to come up with like flowcharts, right? So I have these cool places to go. The question is, how do I want to link them? So I'm going to get these arrows. Can I do colors on my arrows? Oh, wait. Let's see. How do I... Let's see. If I take a color like red and I draw this, it's not allowing me to do colors. I want to find a way to make the different arrows like colored so I can make this blue arrow to follow it through. But for now, let's just stick with this. So let's say Levistus Devil Questic, right? You come across the Amnesu. What does he want you to do? Well, I want him to offer some choices, right? So maybe one choice is that they want them to go to the pyramid and retrieve something. Let's say they also are upset with, well, yeah, let's say they get to Set's pyramid, and Set's pyramid wants either, not entirely sure yet. Let's see. Let's try one of these others maybe. What does the hooligan want? I think the Sahuagin probably really want... maybe the Sahuagin are sick to death of the dragon who's been hunting them every time they come up to the surface. And so they want the PCs to deal with the dragon's lair. Okay, and also maybe the Sahuagin want the PCs to let's say they want the PCs to go and maybe let's just leave that for now. What do the desert call want? Oops. Okay. The desert, they probably have something against the frost giants, right? The frost giants are stole something from them, have an artifact that they want, and it's up to the PCs to get it. Well, how are the PCs going to get it? So this is like step one, right? There should be like, you go to this faction points you towards another like place, and then that should probably lead to something else as well. So maybe the frost giants then have beef with the dragon, right? You go to the frost giants lair. The frost giants are like, you know, we can't give you this item, so the PCs can obviously just murder them all. But if they want to instead ally with them, the frost giants can say, okay, how about you go deal with this dragon who's, you know, we have an ancient beef with the dragon. Go to his lair, destroy him, so we can reclaim our homeland. And then, you know, you'll have enough treasure there. And then when we have our homeland back, we'll gladly hand over this treasure. So this kind of creates like a nested sort of one place leads to the other condition, right? So let's just say for now, I'm going to put Frost Giant's Lair at connected with the Dragon's Lair. Okay, so what does that leave? That means Set's Pyramid from the Levistus quest hook, and maybe something in Set's Pyramid leads back to the Duelist Chasm. The Duelist Chasm. So let me just draw this to here. And that leaves us with the Sahuagin leading us to the Halls of the Forgotten, right? And then that could lead us to Garion's faction. All I'm doing is like putting pieces in place and saying, how can I make this work, right? How can I make these cool things connect? And ideally, what I want is multiple ways for these things to connect, right? So I should be able to, you know, maybe I come to Set's Pyramid, and Set's Pyramid is like, hey, you know what? We've heard there's this dragon that long time ago ambushed one of our caravans and stole this relic. Return it to us, and we'll give you access to our portal. Maybe that's the sort of like splitting choice, right? The Frost Giant's lair could lead to the Dragon's lair, or they could, for instance, lead to the Duelist Chasm. Maybe the Frost Giants are sick of not being able to test themselves in battle, and the Devils won't let them compete there. And maybe you have to go and get the Frost Giants admission to this sort of like dueling ground, and that leads to like the Frost Giants getting their battle. They hand over the thing. I don't know, but the idea is there, right? I could see something like that working. And that leaves for this. So now the problem is I got these two like crossed over so much, and this one's kind of like the sad, lonely one all by itself. Maybe Set's Pyramid instead can connect to the Garion's faction, right? They have some beef with the old faction in charge, and they really need, you know, some people to some ancient payback that's been a long time coming. And then for the Halls of the Forgotten, that leads to the Dragon's Lair, right? So now we have, and this is just a rough outline, right? But we have Interstigia. One of these three quest hooks the players happen to come across, which leads them to these 6 locations in different levels. Like, right, this one leads to this one leads to that. And then I need at the end is I need a way for them to, you know, then we basically are just doing exit Stygia. And no matter how they get there, the end result's going to be the same, right? They are going to the next layer, So then really this becomes our sandbox. When I talk about sandbox, this is what I'm talking about. So what work do I need to do before I'm ready to run this? Well, I need to come up with each of these like sort of quest hooks. I need to flesh out each of these 6 locations. I'm talking NPCs, potential combat, story, reason, stuff like that. And I need to come up with a way that allows them to link to each other. That's a lot of work. That's why doing a sandbox level thing is a lot more work than just saying the 3 scenes that I'm at. Because really, if we're talking about how many scenes are the players going to get, well, they're going to enter Stygia, they're going to get a quest hook, they're going to go do the first leg of this quest hook and come up with some kind of complication, and then the second half of the quest hook, and then exit. So that's like roughly 5 steps. But I have to design so much more that it's never going to get used. So ideally, what I'll do is I will flesh out these 3 quest hooks, which I already have. We've talked it out. I got some good ideas. Then we're going to go through these first three pieces, right? The Hall of Forgotten, Frost Giant's Lair, and Set's Pyramid, if I stick with these. If I flesh those out, and then I can, see where the players go with it, for the next session, I'll have the next session to prep, and then I can flesh out in detail the next one that links to the one I chose, right? So then I have rough ideas, but I can put detail where the players are probably heading. Ideally, I'd like to get through Stygia in like 3 sessions. I think maybe 2, but probably 3. So that gives me some time between things to figure out what we're doing next. And that could come, I'm talking about doing hex crawl, random encounters, which could slow things down quite a bit. So I think this is a good starting point. But the main thing is I want here, here, and here. I want there to be some super epic encounter, right? I want something at the end of Stygia, and maybe even here on the way out of Stygia, there's just a singular awesome epic encounter. Because one of the awesome encounters I can see is like in the pyramid as you descend. Maybe there's something like a guardian that could be an epic encounter. This ancient white dragon could be an epic encounter. But I want each path to have some kind of culmination, some epic climax that really sticks with my players' minds. So I'll need to brainstorm on that. This upcoming week, right? So we play on Sundays at some 6 to 10 p.m. Pacific. And so for this Sunday, we have some time because my players are going to be wrapping up loose ends in Avernus. They're going to try to find a way to plane shift back to the material plane so they can go to Candlekeep again, so they can restock on stuff. I'm planning to throw some quest hooks at them because they're pretty poor. They went to Avernus. They don't have a lot of money. I need some way for them to make money. So in Candlekeep, I'll probably have some. Hey, there's a bunch of people that are like begging for like adventurers, but we don't have a lot of adventurers here. We're all just sages. So here's some quest hooks. Go do them, PCs, and maybe find a way to lure them back to Baldur's Gate, which would bring it full circle. I really think that'd be fun. They can go back and maybe put a complete end to the Cult of the Dead 3, who's still kicking around. So even though we played this Sunday, I don't need everything fleshed out. What I need is my random encounters. I need my map here. I need these quest hooks fleshed out and maybe a general idea of these in case my players really get there. So that's what I'll be spending my downtime doing between here and next week. I also need some kind of cool treasure. I have 5 players, 5 PCs. So I have an Aasimar Paladin, an Aasimar Rogue / Cleric, a human Cleric / Druid that's kind of like shedding the Cleric levels and becoming full Druid. I've got a Warlock, which is like a kind of a Druid Warlock. It's full a full Warlock, but nature basis for Maliki. So leaning into that kind of nature, fighting with wooden weapons, etc. And then I have a Ranger / Fighter who is this killing machine who's been programmed since birth to rescue his father from the 8th level of hell, and that's his whole life's goal and ambition. And so what I really want is to each, almost basically, we have layer 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? Because we're going through 4 layers, and I have 5 PCs, and I really want each PC to get some sort of like, maybe not quest tailored to them, but some reward tailored to them, some signature item that they will kind of become part of their identity. And so I need to find one, presumably like an ice-based one for Stygia. And so I'm really thinking of leaning into like the ice kind of weaponry and coming up with like, for instance, like an ice sword or like an ice dagger for like the rogue, or maybe like a bow. So like one cool thing actually, I think it's on D&D Beyond. Let's see. It was in, oh god. It was in, I think it's in, yeah, here we go. Shield of the Uven Rune, right? Which is for from Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So this is what it is. The shield is made from the scale of an ancient white dragon. Ancient white dragon that's tying in with our story already. It says it has a rune burned on its outward facing side, and a character who examines the rune recognizes that it's giant for enemy and it confers great power. So here's what it is. While you're attuned to this shield, you have immunity to cold damage, and we're on a cold lair, which is awesome. So that helps. Immediately after a creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use a reaction to deal 3d6 necrotic damage. It's like a Hellish Rebuke on demand every turn. That's pretty powerful. You can cast the Bane spell once per day, or not even once per day, once per short rest, which is pretty cool. It doesn't use your concentration. But this is the part that really, to me, makes it this epic, cool moment, which is Gift of Vengeance. And my Paladin is Vengeance Paladin, and it leans into this. Also, my Paladin's been begging for a +2 shield, which is kind of funny. So he might rather have a shield. But anyways, what this does is you can transfer the rune off of the shield to a regular weapon and forge that weapon to become magical. Now, it just becomes a +1 weapon. You're giving up the bonus of the shield, like the immunity to cold damage, the Hellish Rebuke. You're putting on this weapon. It becomes a +1 weapon, which is interesting, but it allows you to choose one creature type, including fiends, and it turns it into a +3 weapon against that one creature type. So I can totally see this really awesome moment of them finding the shield with the rune and learning that they can basically make their own weapon and create its own story as this weapon kind of grows with them. And I could even see like creating the weapon, and as it accomplishes like crazy deeds, giving it like artifact properties that kind of like grow the weapon, almost like a, what do you call them, like exalted weapons? Is that what they're called? The vestiges in like Exandria. So because this ties into ancient white dragons and giants and ice frost giants, I really want to make this the signature, I guess, weapon / item of this lair. I think my main concern is that it's likely to end up in the hands of the paladin, and the paladin just got Zariel's sword and then lost it and now has Zariel's hammer. So ideally, this could theoretically go to anyone else, right? There's nothing that says that this has to go to the paladin other than it's called Gift of Vengeance. I could see this turning into like a +3 bow for their Fiend Slayer Hallandar or something to that effect. So maybe what I'll do is I'm really thinking about making this the sort of signature item of Stygia, the main sort of magical item that they get, and just seeing what they do with it and then tailoring the rest of the run. One of the problems is there's not a lot of good bows, and I'm probably going to have to homebrew a lot of these cool magical items. But this, when I was looking through items I could use, this is what caught my mind for Stygia. So whether this is like a gift from Levistus or something they get from the dragons, like maybe this could be like one of the items that they need from the frost giants at the ancient dragon's lair, an old giant treasure from their old king that now inherits to the PCs. The giants like gift it to them because they're worthy. Be a cool moment. So I think this is one that I really want to do, though. So if you guys have any cool ideas for items that you think would be like a cool signature item, pop in chat. Like I told you, the classes, right? So I need cool items that I think each one of those players could really like latch onto. and make like center of their identity as they go into hell. Yeah, overall though, I think that's probably enough for this first stream. I spent a lot of time going over like who I am, what I'm doing. I'll try. It should be more productive in future DM preps. Like we'll actually walk through and flesh out like a scene, or just type out some cool story ideas or something like that. But you got to start somewhere, right? So hopefully you enjoy what I'm doing here. Hopefully we can go on this journey together. You can find me here on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/DMSteve. You can find me on Twitter at Steve the DM. You can find me on YouTube at DM Steve. Hit me up. I love to hear what you guys think. I really would love for you guys to come with me on the DM prep side and then follow into the game so we can just see what happens. Because one trick about DMing that you'll learn pretty fast is like no matter what you plan, no matter what you prep, it all goes out the window really fast. And the best part about DMing is not sticking to exactly what's written. It's being comfortable enough with the world that you've created and knowing the high level of what's going on so that in the moment when something unexpected happens, you have a good answer and a good thing, or you at least make something up that passes. If you are very stuck on just this happens and this happens and this happens and you memorize that and you don't really think about the whys or what's going on, when something goes off the rails, it's harder to recover. So the biggest thing I can say is just be flexible. Don't overplan. At least don't overplan the details. Plan to your heart's content, the big picture stuff, and the rest will fall into place. At least in my experience. So, anyways, I've had a blast with you guys tonight. Like I said, I'll be doing this again next Wednesday at 8 o'clock Pacific on Wednesday. So next Wednesday will be November 18th. Come and join me then as we continue to flesh out Stygia, and I can react to what my players did last week and have better thoughts about what they want going forward. Yeah, I had an awesome time. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.